Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm trying something different today, and have felt like experimenting with the channel recently. Let me know if you want more horror-style videos. Without further ado, onto 3 allegedly true scary stories. Story 1. An Unexpected Visitor by M. Kizzy Meggs. This happened about 5 years ago, and it was such a terrifying night. My family and I lived in a very rural area during this time, a very small town, and our house was outside of the town by about 15 minutes. Our closest neighbour was about a 7-minute drive away, and our road was pretty overgrown and hard to find, so naturally we didn't get a lot of accidental visitors. It was about 11 at night when my mum, brother and I arrived home from travelling to the bigger city about an hour away. My dad was on a business trip and hadn't been home for several days. As we pulled up to our house, the headlights shined into the yard where we kept an outdoor table. My heart jumped because my bike was on top of the table, not where I had left it. My mum and brother thought it was weird, but we parked and got out anyway. It was dark on the porch, and I stumbled on something as we got to the front door. Once the porch light turned on, we realised that the roofing tiles that had been in boxes were all out, meticulously arranged in different patterns. I got such a cold and uneasy feeling. My mum and brother were very freaked out at this point. Someone had clearly been there. We opened the front door, and this was when I knew we had to go. I always keep my bedroom door shut, and it was wide open. We all booked it back to the car and called my neighbour asking if we could come over. As we pulled out of the driveway, our lights illuminated our laundry line. My brother's bike was hanging from the wires. We all screamed and my mum slammed the gas as we left. When we got to my neighbour's house, we called the police, who showed up and searched our entire property. We also had a barn and a chicken coop. They didn't find anyone. We spent the night at our neighbour's house and went home the next morning. We found even more things inside the house. My bedroom door was open, and someone had opened all of my drawers and placed food inside. Cat food in my underwear drawer and cereal with my pants. They had put canned goods inside the refrigerator and had opened all other cabinet drawers inside the house. Movies had been taken out and rearranged in more patterns like the tiles. As far as we could tell, nothing had been taken, just things rearranged in a seemingly random way. A few weeks went by and nothing came of it. We were all really creeped out, knowing that someone had been into our home and touched our things. It was almost creepier that they hadn't robbed us at all. They had just been through our belongings. We found out who had done it a few months later. My dad's friend had been at a no-talking Buddhist retreat for 3 years and had just gotten out. With no phone or email, he had stopped by to see us. When he found no one home, he, for some reason, thought it would be funny to do the little rearranging stunt. It still creeps me out to this day, and was a very weird incident. Story 2. The Corner of the Room by Celestial Terror. A few years back, me and my girlfriend used to live in Knaresborough, England, a little semi-detached house near the canal. It is a beautiful, charming little town which is known for the bed race and a crazy guy back in the days who had a questionable zoo there. We moved in and it was a beautiful late 1800s style home, and it had a nice homey vibe, except the master bedroom. I did not notice the vibe while viewing the place, but when we stayed there the first night it was considerably colder than all the other rooms. And one corner of the room seemed to be permanently damp. Our dog, little Yorkshire Terrier Duke, could not be in the room with us anymore. He used to sleep with us in the bed, but as soon as he was in the room, he would just rush to the corner where the damp is and uncontrollably bark and growl at the wall. This creeped me out, and I was worried about the cold too, so I put two and two together, you could say. I told my girlfriend that I thought there might be something paranormal involved here, but she just laughed at me. She has always been skeptical of the paranormal. Anyway, we had to kick the dog out at night so he would bark all night at the wall. One night I woke up, about a week after our move, because of the dog barking and scratching at the bedroom door constantly. It's dark in the room. It's a little lit from the moonlight, and we did not have bedside lamps set up there just yet, so I couldn't see much. I sit up and I'm about to lock the dog in the kitchen when I catch a glance. To my left, my girlfriend was naked, curled up in a sitting position, holding her knees right in the damp corner. I let out a little scream from the shock that seemed to shock her awake, and she said, "Maris, what time is it?" I quickly bolted to turn the main light on. She looked dishevelled and confused. I put her back in bed and told her to go to sleep. She was prone to sleepwalking, and I have seen her too do crazy things before, so this was not too weird by all accounts, but nevertheless freaked me out. I was telling this story a few days later to my mate from a nearby town called Harrogate. She asked to come around and have a look. She was into all that spiritual stuff, crystals, etc. She came up with her dog into the bedroom, who also immediately started attacking the wet corner. She walked up and partially touched the wall. 25 seconds later she backed up. Here feels the devil comes through himself. I burst out laughing, expecting her to laugh too, but she was very dead serious, and just continued to try and convince me to move out now and get my deposit back, so that kind of freaked me out more. The final straw came a short while later at night. I was lying in bed, my girlfriend was staying at her mother's that night, so I was on my own. I have always been fascinated with the paranormal, so I brought in a red candle to the room, lit it and put on the creepiest song I know. It's Peter Gundry's Guisha the Devil. I placed the candle in the wet corner and closed my eyes on the bed, semi-meditating, just concentrating on any feelings or noises, or any temperature changes. After about 15 minutes through my closed eyes, I could see the candlelight start to flicker. The room got significantly colder, and a sense of dread started to overcome me, while a smell started to overcome the room of something that I could describe as wet dog mixed with beeswax maybe? Weird. At this point, the track Guisha was playing. I was in such a weird trance state I was scared to open my eyes, so I just waited. I felt a cold touch on my forehead and left upper arm, but it did not scare me for some reason at that point. The next thing I remember is being woken up by my girlfriend in the morning. I was naked, lying in that wet corner. We moved out the following week. Story 3. Market Street by Visual Key 2037. This is about a real place, Market Street in Port Norris, New Jersey. I was 13 when I moved there, so about 30 years ago. I turned 14 there, but moved before I turned 15. This was without the doubt the scariest place I've ever lived, and yet I miss it. Looking on Google Maps in satellite view, I feel like I'm home. I wasn't the only one who had experiences there. One I shared with my brother, but I never found out about everyone else's until long after we had moved. In fact, some experiences weren't discovered until recently. Firstly, I had never been to this house in my life, but knew every room. I even knew which one would be mine before ever entering the house. This was the most recent shared experience I discovered. My mother had the same thing happen to her. This was a 2-story home. It was supposedly over 100 years old when I lived there in 1991. There was a stable in the backyard that was just as old as the house. It was huge. Off from the kitchen there was a downstairs bathroom, which went largely unused. This was because there was actually 3 to 5 stairs you would need to climb up before getting to the bathroom. But it wasn't the climbing that put us off. Directly to the right at the bottom of the stairs was another staircase leading down into a cellar. Of course the door was kept closed, and I never ever went into the cellar. Only my stepfather did, but he entered from outside. I'm not even sure if it was a cellar to be exact. It wasn't underground. Just below the bathroom, even though the bathroom was off from the kitchen and the kitchen was ground level. Actually, I'm unsure on this because, like I said, I never went in. Because no matter how deep into summer it was, in a house without air conditioning, that bathroom stayed seriously cold and gave off a foreboding feeling. The usual stuff happened here. Doors closing on their own, opening, lights coming on and going off, though some of the lights came on at full brightness even though set to a dimmer switch. One day, my mum was working, and my stepfather took my 6-year-old brother there with him. That left me and my 10-year-old brother home. I picked up the phone to call a friend and got no dial tone. Instead, there was the signal that you'd get when there was a phone off the hook. Hang up and retry, same deal. So I left my bedroom and go to my mum's, something I was not supposed to do. But I did it anyway, so I could make sure her cordless was on the hook. Yep. So downstairs to the kitchen, same deal, back to my room, confused, and honestly, very aggravated. Again I try my phone. Now, this is different. Chopping noises. As if someone is using an axe to cut wood. And worse, there's a woman screaming in the background. She sounds terrified. I slam down the phone, then after I cool off, I pick it up again and hear the same thing. So now I'm making my rounds through the phones again, all of them replaying the same scenes straight out a horror movie. When I finally hang up the kitchen phone, my brother finally asks what's going on. I tell him, but he doesn't believe me. I hand him the phone and ask him what he hears. His face goes pale. He hears the same. I pick up the phone again and miraculously get a dial tone. Quickly I dial my mum at work. She gets on, hears my story and says the phone lines are crossed or something. So I get off the phone from her and immediately call my friend. She listens to my story and laughs at me. She thinks I'm making it up. I tell her I'm serious and I'm not making it. Phone disconnects. I stare at it. It rings. I pick up. It's her. She tells me that wasn't funny. She thinks I hung up on her. I tell her I didn't. The phone disconnects again. I get an idea. I tell my brother to go across the street and ask his friend's dad to call me. He does. A few minutes later the phone rings. So I pick up. Chopping and screaming. I repeat hello several times. I give up and hang up. My brother comes back. He says his friend's dad heard me saying hello and his line was clear. I'm done with the phone for the day. If anyone else has anything similar happen to them, please keep me updated.